Welcome to Children's Activity Day.
Good morning. First, let me thank each and every one of you all for attending today's rally for Children Advocacy Week. My name is Tyler Hunter, and I'm from one of the best places on earth, and that's Bowling Green, Warren County. Outside of being a full-time college student and a dedicated college student to my education, I'm also a um, foster youth alumni. And since the age of 19, I have been a die-hard advocate for all of my brothers and sisters in our child welfare system. I got my start from Murray State University's Voices of the Commonwealth Youth Leadership Council. It's a statewide council where other young people like myself have come together to share our experiences to create policy and legislative changes. So I got my foot in the door and I was able to be a part of great changes such as Senate Bill 115, which Senator Mike Wilson from Warren County so graciously assisted to help lead. So Senate Bill 115 expanded the parameters around foster youth like myself in obtaining their post-secondary education degrees. And in April of 2020, it was signed into law by Governor Andy Beshear. So since my first time attending this wonderful event, I've dreamt of using this platform to allow my voice to be heard to some of the most prestigious people in my great Kentucky state. I'm honored that a simple person like me can have such a monumental opportunity. Although this is a week long celebration, it is vital to understand that advocating for young people must be a priority 365 days a year. I understand the difficulties that come with advocating. However, tremendous outcomes can yield from courageousness. I myself am a product of what can happen when someone gets involved. As a kid growing up in foster care, my voice was almost non existent. I only survived because of those adults who were not afraid to call a spade a spade. Those adults happen to be teachers, social workers, case managers, mentors, church members, and even my friends' own parents. But the greatest of them all just so happens to be my adopted mother, who poured into me each and every single day until her departure. See, any and everyone can get involved to make a difference in a child's life. With that being said, I like to shout out Kosair Charities Face It movement and their youth ambassadors. They understand that for 3 consecutive years, our old Kentucky home has been one of the national leaders in the most cases against child maltreatment. Child welfare is not just a DCBS issue. It's not a teacher issue or an educational issue or even just a parent issue. Child welfare is multidimensional and it's everyone's business, from the youngest to the oldest, from to the governor To the citizens, for me, mitigating child maltreatment must be our state's top priority. For you, there may be other issues for kids that you're advocating for this week. And as you're hearing this week, the Blueprint Kentucky's Children Policy and Budget Priorities offer a number of solutions to challenges facing kids and families every day, including ones that would address racial disparity, allowing local communities to regulate the display of tobacco advertisements to prevent kids from getting addicted to nicotine, investing in Medicaid outreach to close the gap in healthcare coverage for kids who are Latino, treating kids like kids in the juvenile justice system, increasing investments in family resource and youth service centers in schools to help students meet their basic needs so that they can better be learners in and outside of the classroom, holding parents accountable in ways that allow them to maintain connections with their kids. To my governor, legislators, I ask that you make sure that our state budget is strong and that it will provide adequate resources accessible to at-risk families and those who support, teach, and care for youth through efficient legislation. So this can be achievable from listening to the institutions and constituent base who have firsthand experience and lived experience. To my fellow Kentucky citizens, I urge you all to step up and advocate for a child and a family in need. There is a way for each and every one of us to get involved here. The advocacy of those caring adults in my life modeled how passionate and selfless an advocate must be. I hold these memories close to my heart, and I implement them each and every day within my own advocacy journey. So far, it seems to be working. Look where I'm at now. I mean, I'm a national advocate leader, a business owner, a graduate student, but most importantly, I am an active adult who cares and understands how important it is to protect and build up our Kentucky youth. I started at the back door attending Children's Advocacy Week, the rally. Everyone's eyes gazed and focused on, the governor, the first lady, the lieutenant governor, Senate President Stivers, House Speaker Osborne, and other state legislators and government officials, and most important, the rally speaker. This time, although virtual, all eyes are on me. However, I like to take this opportunity to ask you all to look beyond me and instead look at those who have experiences like myself and have been resilient and are now loyal and persistent in being an advocate and a healthy adult and an active adult in a vulnerable young person's life. I advocate not just for my brothers and sisters in foster care, but for every child who feels that they have no voice or that it's not being heard. If you are a youth and this message resonates with you, then please know that you're capable of achieving what seems to be out of reach. I walked so one day you all could run. I urge my fellow advocates to do more this year. Increase your call to actions, raise your voices higher, ask for more, venture deeper into uncharted territory, and much more. We owe our youth so much more. I see you, I hear you, I am you. Now it's time to get to work. And now I'm going to turn this thing over to Dr. Terry Brooks, who is the Executive Director of Kentucky Youth Advocates.
Tyler, thank you so much. It is time to get to work, and all of us can learn from your persistence, your leadership. Go Toppers. We're proud of you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Wherever you are today, we've already gotten word that we've got legislators tuning in from their offices. We know we have some folks in civics classes in a school, and we've got some NTI students looking at us. We have direct service workers who are taking time in their busy schedule to join us today. In fact, word is that our good partner Jane Emke and the National Council for Jewish Women are actually having a watch party complete with Krispy Kreme donuts right now. I mean, does it get any better than that? Children's Advocacy Week and Children's Advocacy Day is a collaborative project that we depend on so many partners. For instance, we simply could not have today without our signature partner, Aetna Better Health, our presenting sponsor, United Healthcare. We have AT&T and WellCare to thank for our youth digital media and social media sponsors. When it comes to policy change, so much of what we're talking about is from our Kids Count work, and that signature sponsor is Passport Health Plan by Molina Healthcare. And of course, Tyler already mentioned the critical sponsorship of Kosair Charities. We also want to thank our many partner sponsors that you'll see on the screen throughout today's rally. Pastor Mark Batterson tells the story of a Southern preacher, Brother Michael, making his maiden voyage in 1934 to what was then known as the Holy Land. On the way back to America, he stopped almost spontaneously in Germany, where he became captivated, absolutely captivated, by the courageous story of Martin Luther, the leader of the Protestant Reformation some 4 centuries before. In fact, Luther's protestations against the establishment of his day inspired that pastor's own convictions related to the civil rights issues that would not become a headline for some 25 years later. In fact, Pastor Michael became so focused on the courageous story of Martin Luther that he changed his own name. And Michael King became Martin Luther King Sr. And then Michael turned Martin renamed his 5-year-old son. For the rest of his son's life, close relatives called him Mike, but others called him Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. draws a direct line from his own mission to his father's connection to Martin Luther, and how in the 1500s, Luther imagined what he called unborn tomorrows. Unborn tomorrows. And that's what today is about, imagining unborn tomorrows for Kentucky's children. When you imagine a future for Kentucky's kids, what is that unborn tomorrow? I mean, can you imagine an unborn tomorrow for our boys and girls in which Kentucky does not lead the nation in the rate of abuse and neglect? Or a day when more than 100,000 kids this morning awakened knowing that their mom and dad was in prison? Can you imagine an unborn tomorrow for Kentucky's boys and girls in which we are not debating whether to have armed police walking the halls of our schools, but instead thinking about the emotional and social supports of our students to keep them really safe? Or when we don't have 200,000 children living in poverty, can you imagine an unborn tomorrow for our boys and girls in which kids no longer get spanked by adults in school, and we call it corporal punishment? Or a state when 5-year-olds can no longer be arrested? Or a place where we no longer have half of our kindergartners showing up unprepared to learn? Can you imagine an unborn tomorrow for our boys and girls in which our landscape is not dotted by more payday lenders than McDonald's and KFC franchises? Or a state in which 1 in 2 of Kentucky's families aren't living in a child care desert? What does your unborn tomorrow look like for Kentucky's children? It's one thing to imagine those unborn tomorrows. It's another thing to birth them. And can I tell you that my unborn tomorrows have a reality base? And that reality base is because of the leadership that we enjoy from Frankfurt. I know that you've read, that you hear about the bifurcation and the toxicity of Frankfurt. That may be true in some issues, but let me tell you, I believe that we have a governor and a Senate and a House that when it comes to kids, they come together in common ground, in common sense ways. It is a humbling honor for us to welcome several state leaders today. I'd like to open this rally by welcoming Governor Andy Beshear. Governor, there is no question that as a dad, as a person of faith, and as our state's CEO, that in you, Kentucky's kids have a fervent voice. And I am so appreciative of that. Welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Hello, everyone. It is great to be joining you. I want to begin by thanking Dr. Brooks and the organizers with the Kentucky Youth Advocates for prioritizing everybody's health and safety by the way you're doing this event virtually. And thank you to all the leaders taking part in Children's Advocacy Week. I know that together we can make a difference on behalf of all of Kentucky's children. And this is the time to act. Our time is here and Kentucky's future is now. We're coming off a year where we shattered every economic development record in the books. And that's not just good news for our economy. It's great news for our families and the future employment of our kids. But to stay on top, to ensure the future remains bright for our children, we got to have the courage to make the transformative investments that make sure that every single child in Kentucky has that opportunity. That means we got to address the challenges of today while investing in tomorrow. And we all know our children are that future. That's why last week in my budget address, I proposed transformative investments that would directly impact and aid our kids. It included a record $2 billion investment in pre-K through grade 12 education. And Dr. Brooks said, can I imagine a year where a world where every 5-year-old shows up kindergarten ready? Heck yeah, I can. And it starts with funding preschool for every single 4-year-old in Kentucky, as well as all-day kindergarten. And the budget I recommended does just that. It ensures that every child has that opportunity, that no one shows up in their first day already behind. It opens up amazing possibilities, and the research says it will take us so far. So no longer will tens of thousands of our children be left out of preschool or Head Start. No longer will thousands of children fail to be kindergarten ready. No longer will any child be behind on their first day of school. And you know what? No longer will some parents be in that terrible situation where they say, I guess I'm not poor enough to be able to get into certain programs, but not to be able to afford what right now is only private pre-K to get their kids ready. Getting our children into early learning is critical, and it is a game changer. But my budget recommendation does more, making the single largest investment in K through 12 education in our state's history too. It begins with a 16.9% increase in SEEK funding. It includes a 12.5% increase in the per pupil funding because every single one of our students is worth more, and we ought to be investing more in them. It fully funds student transportation, an 81% increase in funding, because when it comes to what we're putting into our schools, it's also what we get out. These are the types of dollars that can provide the wraparound services to ensure that every child gets the meals they need, which we'll talk about, the social and emotional help. It opens up the possibilities to do so much more. When it comes to the health and well-being of our kids, it can't wait. Our kids deserve the best, and they're growing up in a difficult time, whether that's social media or the pandemic, we have to pay attention to their mental health. That's why my budget also proposes annual funding to create social emotional learning institutes and funding to create 2 new grant programs to provide those wraparound services, especially to students impacted by violence, substance abuse, child abuse, and parental incarceration. And we have not forgotten about funding for our family, resource, and youth service centers, our Friskies. That's the group that when a kid shows up shivering at school, they get them that coat. So we include almost $6 million more each year because we know that's what ultimately supports our children that need them the most. You know, during the pandemic, our kids have faced unprecedented challenges, and this administration has worked to support them. We administered PEBT benefits to more than 640,000 students who depend on school meals for their daily nutrition. At the same time, we administered SNAP benefits to an average of 100,000 more individuals each month when compared to the previous year. SNAP's our first line of defense in Kentucky, and almost 70% of SNAP benefits in Kentucky are families with children. You know, one of the only miracles that appears in every book of the gospel is Jesus' feeding of the hungry. It occurs in almost a desert. Yet, he provides for everyone. Surely, in a place like the United States, where we grow more food than right now can be consumed by our population, in the wealthiest country in the world, that we can assure that no child or no senior goes unfed. And of course, we know the importance of health care. It is a basic human right. More than 660,000 Kentucky children are enrolled in Medicaid. So in last week's address, I announced my budget will fully fund that Medicaid program. These services are critical to improving children's health and the health of all of our families. Now, sometimes, though, the challenge is not healthcare coverage, but having effective treatments that will cure our kids when they're sick. One of the most heartbreaking times of need is when a child faces a cancer diagnosis. Childhood cancer is the #1 cause of death and disease in children, and that's always been tough to swallow, but it became personal for Brittany and me when our friend David Turner Jr. died of brain cancer after an incredibly courageous battle. He was 9. You may remember we honored him by proclaiming May 21st, 2021 as David Turner Jr. Ice Cream Day in the Commonwealth. It's what he wanted. When I sat him behind my desk the first time I met him, I said, "Your governor, what is it that you want to do?" He said, "I want it to be Ice Cream Day in the Commonwealth." Now he has an ice cream day named just after him. We celebrate his life in his spirit by investing in research to make sure other children aren't taken from us, which is, I know, what he'd want to do. So in our budget, we've increased funding to the Kentucky Pediatric Research Trust Fund to help move forward research and get better outcomes for our kids. And as we know, it'll take all of us working together to bring lasting, sustainable change for our children. And you, leaders across the Commonwealth, are making a difference, both as your governor and as a dad of 2 kids who mean the world to me. There is nothing more important to me than protecting our children and helping them reach their full potential. In the best of times and circumstances, the work so many of you do on behalf of our children is challenging. During this pandemic and the recent natural disasters, your commitment to our children has been nothing short of heroic. And as we move towards that better Commonwealth, I think it's pretty important that we listen to our children as well. All too often, adults think that they know it all. But folks, I'm just 44, and as a child, I didn't have to grow up with social media. The stresses that our kids face today, they're different. And if we want the best solutions, we have to actually listen to those that are going through it. So whether it is our kids that are offering their voice or all of you out there doing this good work, the Commonwealth owes you a debt of gratitude. But more importantly, we owe you more than just thanks. Your efforts deserve our respect and support. So, with the best budgetary climate in recent history, with a $1.9 billion surplus moving into this budget, with better revenue forecasts for the next 2 years than we have seen in decades, with the largest rainy day fund in history, with the ability to do more in that rainy day fund, fully fund our pensions and pay them down, we still have record funding. And we ought to put it to work to ensure a bigger, brighter future for our children. Listen, this last year was tough. It was tough on everybody, but I'm telling you, even in the midst of it, we have arrived. We're the talk of every boardroom across America, and every country now knows not just where we are, but what we can do. We are no longer a flyover state. We are the destination. That is what I've always wanted for my kids and the kids of Kentucky. Now we got to make sure that we invest in them to prepare them for this incredibly bright future where the jobs of tomorrow in agritech, in life sciences, in electric batteries for vehicles is right in front of them. We can leave this Commonwealth in better shape for our kids than our parents or our parents' parents or our parents' parents' parents. But we got to have the courage to do so. No one ever runs for office saying we wanted to preserve the status quo or tread water. Let's all work together to do something truly memorable to set our kids up for the biggest, brightest future they could ever imagine. Thank you.
Governor, thanks so much for being here today, and we appreciate the leadership and the focus that you give to Kentucky's kids. As I mentioned, it is so easy to fall into the trap of thinking nothing happens in Frankfort. A lot happens in Frankfort. In fact, along with a number of victories over the last several years, there have been some major changes, whether that's the school safety and resiliency bill from a couple years ago, a House bill that fundamentally reformed child welfare some 3 years ago. I believe the genesis of the big swings, of the major changes, was Senate Bill 200 that fundamentally reshaped juvenile justice in this state. And one of the two quarterbacks of that effort is our next speaker. Judiciary Chair Senator Whitney Westerfield, he lives what it means to be a champion for kids. As a dad, again, as a guy who's got it by both his brain and frankly his soul, Senator, you know that I have just the highest regard for you. Thank you so much for being here today. Share your thoughts about that concept that we've been talking about, unborn tomorrows for Kentucky's little boys and girls.
A lot of the efforts you just rattled off and a slew of others that you didn't wouldn't be here if the advocacy and the data and the hard work of your team and your folks, if it wasn't here. So I'm grateful for all that KYA does. But you're right. There's always ways that we can improve. And even with Senate Bill 200, which I'm certainly grateful for and proud of, and has been the genesis itself of legislation in about half a dozen other states around the country. It was that transformative in Kentucky. But as big as it was, there were things that we didn't accomplish with that bill and with others that you've mentioned. We continue to see places where black and brown children are treated more harshly than their white counterparts in our schools. We continue to see child hunger. We continue to see the impacts on children and family because of incarcerated parents. There have been efforts in the last few years to create a minimum age of criminal responsibility, something I think Kentucky should absolutely adopt because we all recognize that the adolescent brain doesn't completely develop until you're 25. There's a lot of our prison population made up of that 18 to 25-year-old age bracket. And perhaps confinement's not always the best solution for those folks, particularly if they've had trouble as a juvenile going through and growing up, making the same mistakes that all kids make, but because of their lot in life, they had a different trajectory than mine or someone else's or someone else that looks like me. We can make a lot of change. I'm driven by, and I frequently make mention of it, but I'm driven by a quote from Frederick Douglass. It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And I believe that. It's the truth. We have an opportunity to make transformative generational change for the good in the lives of Kentucky's kids here in Frankfort, wherever you are across the Commonwealth, in your community. read a great piece on Sunday by the author David French with the Dispatch, and he talked about the importance of fathers and the role of fathers in the family and how much of a difference it can make. And there's a powerful line in there that I've been talking about what we in Frankfort can be doing, but government can't love a kid. You can love a kid. I can love a kid. We can all love the children and provide for the children in our area and our communities and be role models for them, even if we're not here in Frankfort doing something. But for the next 50 days, there will be legislation that we're going to talk about and hopefully advance and move forward that changes a lot of things, or at least moves the football a little bit further down the field. We may not score touchdowns on every single play, but we're going to keep advancing the ball. There was a time when we weren't talking about the impact on minority races in our juvenile population or in our adult population. But here I sit, Terry, and we've got the Commission on Race and Access to Opportunity that's already met for several months and will continue to meet this year and continue to produce objectives for the legislature and for others to adopt an approach and pass. Some things take longer than other things, but we're going to keep fighting for it because children matter. And as KYA is so quick to report and remind us, kids count. And we need to make sure that the people they're counting on, all of us, can deliver the outcomes that make the best world for them.
Senator, thank you so much. Again, your imagination, your boldness, and your persistence means so much, not to just me, but to Kentucky's boys and girls. We talked about major wins. Let me tell you the architect of so many major wins: child welfare reform, a focus on emotional and social supports and resiliency in schools, the whole concept of facing racial disparities head on. Those ideas came from one of the folks that I think is the most strategic thinkers in the Commonwealth, and that's Speaker David Osborne. Mr. Speaker, you're someone who always gives us access, who always engages in thoughtful conversations. Kentucky's kids are truly, truly blessed to have you in the position that you're in. When I invited you to this, your staff member said, you know he's going to be there because you know where his heart is. We do know where your heart is, and we appreciate that more than you can possibly know.
Well, thank you, Terry. Thank you for your long-term friendship. Thank you for your tireless advocacy. And thank you for inviting me today to join you. As you said, I will always be here when you call and do everything we can to help. As I begin, I want to recognize Kentucky Youth Advocates and so many individuals and organizations that are watching, and again, for your tireless advocacy. I want to reflect a little bit on last year's meeting. I remember saying as part of my talk that I thought everything would be okay. And while we still face many challenges related to the pandemic and the storms that hit Western Kentucky in December, we continue to move forward and address our challenges. I know you have a full agenda of speakers today, but I want to share a little bit about the House's budget, a proposal that was filed almost 2 weeks ago by Chairman Petrie. I know you heard a little bit about the governor's. I want to tell you a little bit about ours. And crafting a responsible budget is always a challenge when you're a state with so many needs and limited resources. You know, you add to that a global pandemic and an economic shutdown, a windfall of federal dollars, it gets even more difficult. However, I think you have to be impressed with the work that Chairman Petrie, Vice Chairman Reed, and our Budget Review Subcommittee chairs have done. And they remain focused on budgeting to the state's needs while reserving enough opportunity to incorporate changes as the plan moves through the process. House Bill 1, our budget, includes record funding for public education. It increases the basic guarantee from $4,100 in the first year and $4,200 in the second year. Both of those are record highs. For perspective, every new dollar in SEEK translates into an additional investment in $800,000 in Kentucky schools for every dollar. Our proposal also doubles state funding in both fiscal years to cover the entire cost of full-day kindergarten and increases transportation funding from approximately 51% to a minimum of 70%, with some districts getting to 100% of funding. One of the items that I'm most proud of is for family resource and youth service centers. Friskies are on the front lines, helping students and their families with basic needs. Under the House proposal, they will receive an additional $12 million in each year of the budget. The House budget also provides certified speech pathologists and audiologists with the same subsidy as certified teachers. We also made significant strides in supporting those who work in child welfare. The budget includes funding for raises for social workers and institutes a retention payment plan for social workers. And this is a $25 million increase in the first year and more than $61 million in the second year. We also included funding for additional 100 social worker positions in each year of the budget for a total of 200. House Bill 1 also raises the reimbursement rates for the 15C waiver services by 10% in each year of the budget. This provides new slots that can be filled immediately. We didn't want to fund more slots than the care system could provide, but this chooses to support a steady growth in the system. House plan also ensures funding for Medicaid growth and the inevitable reduction in federal reimbursement. This totals more than $1 billion in fiscal years 23 and 24. These are just a handful of examples of our commitment to meeting the state's needs. As you can see, we took a strategic approach to making those investments that meet our state's needs the most. I want to stress that crafting a budget is a process. As you said, we heard from the governor's budget proposal last week, and we're reviewing it now. Once we pass a bill, it will go to the Senate, where they will likely make a lot of changes as well, and it will eventually end up in a pre-conference committee for further work and a budget that will ultimately serve the state over the next 2 years. I hope that you follow along in the process and reach out as the bill goes through this entire process, knowing that it's not finished until the very last bill is passed. I didn't join this call today just to talk about dollars and cents, but I think the details of House Bill 1 make it clear that Kentucky's children are a priority. I know that Speaker Pro Tem David Meade will be joining you a little bit later, and he's going to share with you a great deal of information about the work that we're doing on public assistance reform. I'm always a little bit hesitant to call it public assistance reform because of the preconceived notion of what that means. Please keep an open mind and work with us as we instead focus on eliminating the barriers to an independent, successful life. Our plan incorporates bridge insurance, child care assistance, and supports for those willing to break a cycle that may run 2, 3, 4 generations deep. After all, no one should ever be heard to say they can't afford to take a job. Terry, thanks again for having me. Thanks again for asking me to participate in KYA's annual day at the Capitol. I look so forward to the day that we can actually do it again at the Capitol. Obviously, we remain committed to working with you and other organizations that help Kentucky children. Let me also say a quick thank you, Terry, for recognizing the commitments of Representatives Beckler, Hart, Massey, and Petrie. Thanks so much. I know this isn't the best forum for questions. I'm happy to answer them if you have, but certainly you know that I'm always available to answer questions and meet with you and other representatives anytime that it's appropriate.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. I just want to reiterate that when the Speaker says he is always open to questions, he actually means it. So when you hear something going on in the House, I really want to encourage you not just to reach out to your representative, but I'm telling you, one of the most responsive leaders that I've ever bumped into is David Osborne. So Mr. Speaker, thanks for being here. You have heard from the executive branch. You've heard from the legislative branch. We frankly don't have the judicial branch on this rally, but we do have the fourth branch of government. That's the Division of Kids. Apparently, the head of the Kindergarten Caucus is joining us today, and that's Nash Whittish. So, Nash Whittish, take it away.
My name is Nash, and I'm 6 years old, and we can't go to Frankfurt today, but if we could, you might ride a bus, which is why we are on the bus, sing along storybook. And everybody sing along with me. And when we sing, wheels on the bus go round and round, you do this. And when we do wipers, we do this. And okay, we're gonna start. The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels on the bus go round and round, all through the town. The wipers on the bus go swish, swash, swish, swish, swash, swish, swish, swash, swish. The wipers on the bus go swish, swash, swish, all through the town. Okay, everybody have fun at Children Advocacy Week.
So what about it? Do you think it's harder to follow Tyler or Nash? I don't even want to think about that. One of the things that I think we especially miss doing this virtually is when we get a chance to honor so many folks who have made a difference for kids today. You're going to see in just a moment really 3 categories of folks who we honor. Speaker Osborne already referenced one group, and that's a group of legislators who during the 2020 session made a real difference for kids. We are going to be following up with individual presentations. You can follow those on social media as well as our other collateral to learn specifically what these folks did. But again, I really want to emphasize to you to push back against the narrative that nothing is happening in Frankfort. You saw that list of senators. There's the list of representatives. Again, you note that neither urban nor rural, Democrat or Republican divided those folks. They are genuinely champions for Kentucky's kids. This year, we also are recognizing a group of folks who I think tend to get overlooked. And that are those include folks who are staff members who really make a difference. Again, we're going to be doing this with Secretary Friedlander and other state leaders. But on that list, you see the folks who made a difference, whether it was in child care or food security or child welfare or protecting children from neglect. And again, it's so easy, isn't it, not to take a moment and thank those professionals who work in Frankfort. The final name you saw on that last list of champions was Jennifer Washburn. Each year we try to honor a community leader at this event. And let me just tell you a moment about Jennifer Washburn. Jennifer is from Benton, Kentucky in Marshall County. For over 20 years, she has been leading a top quality child care early childhood center in the Benton area. And this year, as the pandemic engulfed families, she kept her center open so that families could continue to work. She didn't just keep her family, those families accessible for child care. She went way beyond that direct service. And let me tell you, she influenced the United States Congress. She specifically was called out by Leader McConnell for shaping his thinking and that of his colleagues when it came to child care support during the pandemic. And then more recently, more tragically, Benton was in the direct line of hit from those tornadoes that ravaged the western part of our state. Jennifer again stepped up to show the essential nature of child care. Not only did her center remain open, she took the steps to ensure that more than 24 school-aged children and additional preschoolers had her service so that parents could work, that parents could help their neighbors, that parents maybe could just clean up their own tornado-ravaged spaces. So we want to thank those legislators. We want to thank those state workers. And Jennifer, we want to thank you. There can't be a better way to conclude today's rally than from hearing from another young person. Katherine Morrison is a senior at McCracken County High School, and you're going to hear a vibrant vision of what she knows young people can do for, I think Tyler said, their brothers and sisters across the state. Katherine, we've been thinking about you, as well as Tyler, as well as Jennifer, since all of you are in the western part of Kentucky. So we send you our best wishes and our prayers, and we thank you so much for being here today.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me. This is just such a great opportunity, and I just want to say thank y'all for listening to my voice. I chose to be an advocate because my main concern is taking down tobacco. I've seen what nicotine addiction can do, not just to friendships, but to families as well. My dad started smoking cigarettes when he was about 12 years old, and that led him down a path of more nicotine addiction and more different addictions, and that had some effects on our family, and I've seen the effects that it's had on our family. Also going to school, I go to McCracken County High School, as you said, and that school has about 2,000 kids in it. So I see a lot of things. I know that a lot of people have been addicted to nicotine and they're only 14, and that's very scary to me. I also play varsity soccer for the school, and I've seen great athletes turn into just okay athletes, or they've actually just stopped being an athlete altogether because of their nicotine addiction, and they can't run as fast as much, or they can't, their endurance isn't as good because of their nicotine addiction and the effects that it's had on their health. I've also seen people's friendships start and end because of nicotine addiction. A lot of times people are friends with people that do the same things as them. So they're friends with somebody just because they vape, and then when they stop vaping, then they're not friends anymore. So then that ruins a lot of friendships. And for teenagers to lose any type of friend, that can cause a detriment to their being. And also, as you said, we are a part of Western Kentucky. I'm in Paducah, which is about 30 minutes away from Mayfield, where I know a lot of the tornado really, really affected them. After it happened, we were told, McCracken, we got lunches together, we donated waters, we actually sent students over there to help collect trash and stuff like that, and give out lunches and stuff to the first responders. I'm part of McCracken FCCLA, and I know that we created lunches and stuff to send to them. We made waters, lunches. We sent care packs. We had little knitted sweaters and hats that we used to send to Ecuador, and we actually sent them to the victims so that way they could be cold, they could be warm, because it was very cold and it was about to rain. Also, I was working the night of the tornado, and we were told to go to the pet section and put dog beds on our heads. So it was very scary for us, and I thought that it was about to hit us, but then it actually went around us. So I'm very thankful for that, and no one that I knew was affected per se, but I know that a lot of kids that I know, their families or them was affected. So, and as we close out this rally, I would like to remind all advocates that this is only one of many events for Children's Advocacy Week, and there's still a lot of legislative sessions left to go over this week. Please visit Kentucky Youth Advocates website to see the rest of the schedules for Kentucky Advocacy Week. Look up the contact information for your legislator and check out the blueprint for Kentucky's children's policy priorities. I just want to say thank you again, everyone, for joining. The legislators, the students, all, thank you just so much for joining and being a part of our Advocacy Week. Thank you.